Hi. Welcome to Archival Silence in an Age of Spreadable Media, Gender, Sexuality, and Open Source Steampunk Fandom. I'm Roger Whitson, and I decided to create this video in order to help you understand where this project came from. The project emerged out of two interests of mine. First is steampunk. Steampunk as a genre is usually understood as Victorian science fiction, and yet the fans emerging around this genre are communicating in some really interesting ways on social media, at conventions, and in public forums that are challenging how scholars have traditionally understood 19th century British literature. And the second interest is social media itself, and the challenges that social media issues towards archives in the form of how it understands silence and representation. Now, by saying this, I don't mean to be overly optimistic. Data, of course, is political, social, and cultural. But I do mean to suggest that data, which more people can access on social media sites, changes political strategy and political representation. This change is embodied in a term that I call open source culture. And I call it this after steampunk fans. I suggest that open source culture requires a more dispersed sense of archival theory, one that is participatory as well as representational, and that includes fans on the same level as traditional scholarly editors. And I want to ask what the role of gender and sexuality is in this sort of open source culture that steampunk fans have created for themselves. Now, there are several ways to experience this project. First, you could look at my discussion of the inadequacies of textual archival theory, the politics of open source culture, and the potential of a DIY or do-it-yourself punk culture that promotes female, trans, and queer individuals. And then you can move on to the individual case studies. Second, you could start with the fans themselves, see how they define their political individuality, and then reflect on the larger issues surrounding archives and culture. Or third, you could simply look at how this project emerged out of my conversation with Diana Foe and her commitment to social media, and then move on to my more traditional theoretical discussion and see the two approaches emerging in a kind of dialogue with one another. I decided to create three different approaches to reflect the kind of more limited role I feel that editors have over digital archives, because I didn't want this project being determined by my own decisions about how I feel it should be read. However way you choose to read the project, I hope you enjoy some of the ideas I present here, and perhaps in an ideal world, it might encourage you to participate more fully in steampunk fan culture, if only to understand how fans are reinterpreting the 19th century for today. I'd like to give thanks to Kathy Harris and Jackie Wernimont for their help in conceptualizing the project and for encouraging me to think differently about archives. And I'd also like to thank Diana Foe, who helped introduce me to many of the fans in the steampunk community and who is a tireless advocate for understanding steampunk as a political space. Thanks a bunch.